Fairytales in Reverse. Little Red by Fiza G, Michelle L, and Peter E. Once upon a time, a sweet little wolf lived in the forest. While the rest of our pack's fur was stone gray or streaked with white, this particular wolf had fur as red as the changing colors in fall. For this reason, she was called Little Red. One day, her mother, content after a good day of hunting, asked Little Red Wolf if she wanted to go see her grandmother.
Grandmother?
Little Red asked. Little Red could hardly remember her grandmother. She'd left the clan years ago when humans came and destruction had reigned through the forest. Little Red had heard many stories about her. She hunted with the Great Fire Clan, the clan with the greatest hunters of all, and Little Red had gotten her beautiful red coat from her.
Yes, Little Red.
Mama Wolf smiled.
She's been missing you, I heard. Her pack is on a hunt nearby. They're staying at the sunburnt stream. You should go and visit her, explore the forest, have a little adventure. I think you're old enough now.
I'd love to go see her,
Little Red exclaimed. The clan is so boring. Mama Wolf had never let her hunt with the pack.
You're too young,
She would say.
It'll be good for you, I believe. I am trusting you will be safe and cautious in this journey. You must remember, dear, never go near the path. Humans prowl the area with their monsters.
Little Red nodded yes joyfully and ran to give her mother a few quick licks on the cheek before hurriedly bounding into the dense forest. The green of the forest was soft on Little Red's paws as she raced past the trees. She heard the growl of a human monster and her ears perked up. She noticed that she'd come too close to the path, but she went a little closer anyways out of curiosity. There was a human standing there. He was standing in the shadows, but she could make out that he was a grown man. Little Red was about to slink away, but the man spotted her.
Hello, little wolf. Would you like some of these blueberries? I just finished picking them. They are fresh and sweet,
He said.
Blueberries? I haven't had blueberries for a long time. They grow near the human homes, and Mama says I'm not supposed to go there.
Little Red looked at the man.
Well, then it is a special treat for a beautiful red wolf like you. You should have them. Take some on your way with you,
He said, reaching out with his hand. Little Red patted forward slowly, accepting the sweet-smelling food in her mouth.
Thank you very much.
Little Red Wolf said before gulping it down.
It tasted better than a rabbit.
She thought. She licked the outside of her mouth twice to make sure she'd gotten every last bit.
So where might a cute little thing like you be headed in these woods?
The man asked in a sing-song voice.
To the sunburnt stream.
Little Red exclaimed.
I'm going to meet my grandmother.
Your grandmother, huh? What is she like? Does she live here?
No, she doesn't live here. She's only visiting for a little. I don't know her too well. She left our clan years ago. She's part of the Great Fire Clan now.
Little Red gushed. The man smiled at her. Little Red found it a little disconcerting. It reminded her of the hawks before it steals the rabbit. The smell of another bag of sweet blueberries distracted her, though, and she crouched down on her paws to gulp it down.
I'll be on my way now. I have more berries that need to be picked. Farewell, little wolf.
He heads out into the shadows again. Little Red continued happily through the forest. She just knew that her grandmother would love some of these blueberries just as much as her. She couldn't wait to share them with her. She headed off, running into the forest with a full tummy and a heart full of happiness to see her grandmother. The sun was shining golden, the forest below was bright green, and her forest of fir was glowing red. Life was beautiful. Little Red bounced happily towards her grandmother's den. Right before she reached its mouth, she heard a strange rumbling voice call out.
Stop right there, little one.
My grandma, what a strange voice you have.
Little Red said, tilting her head in confusion. Her voice seemed unlike that of other wolves.
Just put a cough, my child.
Her feet appeared to be on the opposite sides of where they should be, and they move abnormally.
My grandma, what strange feet you have.
Little Red mumbled in a self-conscious manner.
Just but a birth defect, my child. Haven't you been taught it's rude to point out such things?
Her grandmother replies. A small black nose, at least Little Red thought it was, poked out onto the light. Why, what a strange nose you have. Little Red whispered, now unsure. The dark shape behind the nose started moving forward until the man Little Red had met earlier, a hunter, stood in full light, holding a black rifle pointing towards Red Wolf.
Just because it's not a nose.
The hunter said, still impersonating Grandma.
You're not Grandma at all.
Little Red yelped. And then, a flash. Everything is black.
Cinderella by Julia M., Zoe M., and Haley N. Cinderella had never been to a ball before, and truthfully, she wasn't sure if she wanted to ever go to one again after this experience. Instead of having fun, as she was promised by her friends, she had spent the entire evening evading the prince. Prince Charming. What a cheesy name, but it certainly fit his character. Charming had been chasing her all night and could not take a hint. Every attempt she made to avoid him was countered and parried by the prince, and she was getting tired of it. Cinderella quickly shuffled in her sparkling shoes over to her friend Elizabeth.
Lizzie, he's following me. I swear he's been looking for me for the last 20 minutes.
Quit whining. He's Prince Charming. Some people would kill to be you.
At that moment, as though he could hear them, Prince Charming called out to Cinderella.
Cindy!
Cinderella's head rolled back to look at the ceiling, and she took a deep breath before looking for a new hiding spot.
Cover for me. Tell him I have the stomach flu.
Cinderella called over her shoulder to Elizabeth while hurrying away. The large ballroom was full of hiding possibilities. She thought for the restroom, but she wouldn't put it past Charming to follow her in there, and that was not a risk she was willing to take. The plant over in the corner wouldn't suffice for long. She would certainly find her there, and she wasn't willing to take that risk. The ballroom it was. Bathroom it was. After sneaking a few steps, she heard his obnoxious voice again.
Cindy, darling, come on. I feel like you're avoiding me or something.
That was exactly what she planned on doing. Cinderella clenched her jaw and rolled her eyes, her body rigid as she turned to face him.
What is it exactly that you want, Your Highness?
Cinderella impatiently mocked.
Just your company. You know, you don't have to be so rude.
Chided the prince with an artificially shy smile.
How sweet of you. I must have forgotten my manners.
Cinderella replied dryly.
You know me, always as sweet as can.
The prince was cut short as his father came up from behind and tapped him on the shoulder.
Son, it's time for you to greet the royal court. Come with me.
Charming did not seem very pleased by the king's timing, though. Cinderella was forever grateful. After a couple seconds of protest, the prince turned back to Cinderella.
Bye, Cindy. I'll see you later.
Charming said with a wink. Cinderella shuddered, rolled her eyes, and quickly shuffled away in the opposite direction to find Elizabeth and her other friends. Her eyes scanned the ballroom as she pushed through the crowds of people. Finally, she saw the back of Elizabeth's head bobbing toward the dance floor. Cinderella hiked up her dress as not to trip and rushed over to her friend.
Lizzie! Wait, Lizzie!
Cinderella called after Elizabeth. Cinderella saw Elizabeth's curly brown head turn around as she shuffled toward her out of breath. Taking a few seconds to compose herself, Cinderella explained what had happened.
Lizzie, I swear that man should be arrested. He's stalking me. He almost followed me into the bathroom.
Don't be ridiculous.
Elizabeth was cut short by Charming himself. A drink in his hand, he held it out, offering it to Cinderella.
Throw it on the creep.
She thought her impatience finally getting the best of her. She had to ignore the little voices in her head because, as immature as he was still the Prince of Genovia.
Hey, Cindy. Having a good time?
His voice goes much lower than it was before. Cinderella saw that Elizabeth disappeared into the crowd of people beyond the prince. She let out an annoying sigh.
Sure, the music is okay.
As Cinderella stares past Charming once again, she sees Elizabeth in the background making kissy faces and hearts around Cinderella and Charming's head from across the dance floor. She glanced back with a "get me out of here" face. She had definitely reached her limit.
I have to go, Your Highness.
Cinderella practically blurting out, sprinting toward the door in her high heels. She was willing to take the risk of falling as long as she fell a long way away from the Prince Charming.
Cindy! Cindy! You left your shoe.
Prince Charming yelled across the ballroom, following her through the crowd. Unbeknownst to Cinderella, during her sprint to the door, one of her dimey Jimmy Choos had been caught on her long blue gown. Her left shoe had been left behind. Cinderella's mind was focused on getting far, far away from Prince Creepy. She wouldn't be able to hear a train, nonetheless a scrawny guy running after her. Charming stood on the dance room front steps of the castle. With Cinderella's shoe in hand, he had found it by the door. As hard as he tried, it was impossible to see through the crowds of people who were milling about. Cinderella had gotten away from him tonight, but he vowed to find her, even if all he had to go was his shoe. Several days later, at Cinderella, a high-pitched voice squeaked, dangerously close to Cinderella's ears. The voice reminded her of a dying cat.
What, Anastasia?
Cinderella sighed.
You'll never guess who's coming to see me.
Is it Frank? Simon? Who is it that you're dating now?
Ugh, no. Frank is so 2 weeks ago, and I dumped Simon a few days ago. Silly, it's the prince.
Prince Charming?
Cinderella's eyes went wide. He couldn't find her, not now. She had been able to evade him so far, but if he had come into their house, an encounter would be inevitable. However, she was determined to remain invisible. She ran into her attic bedroom and hastily locked herself inside. After a few minutes of laying face down on the bed, almost hesitating to breathe as to not make a sound, she raised herself up to look outside the window. The prince's limo had just arrived, and Anastasia was downstairs to greet him. Charming smiled his cocky grin at her, and Anastasia flirtatiously and shamelessly flirted back. He then held out one of Cinderella's shoes to Anastasia. She nodded in acceptance, claiming that the shoe belonged to her. Still spying, Cinderella saw the prince leaned back against the door of the carriage, and Anastasia nodded enthusiastically. Charming winked at Anastasia, then drove off in a cloud of dust.
Cinderella! Cinderella!
Anastasia screamed while knocking on Cinderella's door excitedly.
What, Anastasia?
Cinderella replied while getting off of her bed to unlock the door.
Guess who has a date with the Prince of Genovia?
Anastasia said, almost beside herself with enthusiasm. Cinderella looked up as
As long as it isn't me, I really don't care.